Welcome to episode 15 of the 40 Years and 40 Beers podcast. We have a very special guest this week, Delco native Chris Pierdomenico. Chris is a graduate of Sun Valley High School. He's an Aston resident. Chris has 15 credits to his name as a filmmaker. Among them are Between Us Love, Destiny, Game Over, Blackout, Harry Godfather, Jesus v. Satan, Rise of the Zombies, and of course, what he's here for, one of our favorite films, Delco The Movie.
Chris,
welcome, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, I have done more projects, but those are the ones I will admit to.
The other ones didn't work out very well?
No, they didn't work out so well.
So tell us, one, being a Delco native, unfortunately, Massey and I haven't gotten to see the film yet because you're kind of a marketing genius where you have to actually go to a viewing, which I find incredible. I think that's a really smart idea, especially for an independent film. It's a passion of yours, obviously. It's something you wanted to do because you love it. But it's also nice to turn a little revenue.
Yeah, it kind of has worked out. I've been filmmaking for over 20 years, but this is the first time that we've gone through the distribution process, trying to find a distributor to release it as physical media or, kind of more abundantly streaming. And so that takes a while to kind of like find the right one. And so we're in talks. So it kind of works out that, okay, we can just kind of do screenings here and there. And it's been kind of a way for people to experience the film for the first time or just kind of rewatch it, kind of see things that they missed. Sometimes I make minor changes, between screenings, depending on kind of audience reaction. The last screening we did was at Marty McGee's at the end of June. And so he has this great outside beer garden and stage and screen. So we're watching it at it's right next to the SEPTA track. So trains going by as the movie's playing. It's nothing more Delco than that.
That's pure Delco. I was actually going to say, we like to have a few cocktails on our podcast. So I'm actually drinking a staple here in Delco, which is Miller Lite. That's the champagne of Delco. Tell us how this all came about. I mean, obviously, you've been making films for 20 years. Delco resident, lifelong Delco resident. And I think we can all agree Delco is an extremely unique place. Massey and I ourselves are both originally from Southwest Philly. We're Delco transplants. We've both been out here for 20 plus years. But believe it or not, Southwest, when we grew up, was a lot like Delco. Everything was, what parish you're from. He's from St. Mary's, he's from Loretta, he's from Clemens, which is a very Delco thing as well. So we kind of understand the dynamics. And take us through, just the beginning of how you just decided, I'm actually going to tackle this project and see it all the way through.
Well, I started this as a project in high school. So I'm a Sun Valley graduate, 2004. I did a version of this film in 2004 as a high school senior. And that was, inspired by seeing Clerks. I saw Kevin Smith had done Clerks. Very, very simple concept. Two guys in one place talking about stuff. I'm like, I felt like, okay, I can do something like that. That seems achievable. I'd wanted to be a storyteller my entire life, but, for the first time, it wasn't something that was unattainable, making a film. So, after that, I went to college to be a teacher. I was always working on stuff. You've seen my IMDb. I've had short little projects here and there over the years. I've had a very odd career. Basically, what happened was it was 2021. So we were just coming out of the pandemic. And I realized holy shit, it's going to be 20 years in a couple years, and I had always in the back of my mind, I said I want to make the definitive version of this. I want to make a real version of this film that is it's something I always wanted to do. And I just kept kind of pushing back. And I'm like, I can't, if it gets to 20 years, I'm just not going to forgive myself. I just have to go and do it. And so that summer, I already had, the characters and basic story, for years and years, but actually writing out the script, I challenged myself to write 5 pages a day. One of the best parts of being a teacher is that we have flexibility in the summer. And so I was able to kind of use that time to pump out a script, started auditioning in 2022, and we were in pre-production in 2023. And then we wrapped in 2024, and then we premiered. It was how did it happen? I just felt like something I had to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't really an option. I was going to figure out some way to do it. I mean, even if it was, and I had thought about it, We had a great production company help us called Get Kinetic with Kevin Hackenberg. He was our cinematographer. But before we even had them on board, I'm like, if I have to, I'll just shoot this on some iPhones. That's something that can be done.
Sure.
It's not unreasonable.
Yeah, with 4K for sure. Yeah.
Now, I feel like the film, because I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, and it seems like you are as well. I feel like the film, from what I've seen, really is a homage to his writing style, his directing style. Am I off there?
No, you're totally accurate. I even had the star of Clerks in my film playing a pretty significant role, Brian O'Halloran.
Yeah, we were going to get into that. Yeah. So how did that come about? I mean, how did Brian O'Halloran get involved? You know, being an independent film, and I want to get into maybe how you worked out some financing later, how that all goes down. You know, I think our listeners would love to hear that. So I would have to imagine, I mean, he didn't do this out of the kindness of his heart, correct?
Well, you know, Brian's a professional. You know, he's a really great guy, but you know, this was a job for him. I mean, it was a job for all of us. But how did I get involved with Brian? So being a Kevin Smith fan, you know, I went to a lot of events over the years, in New Jersey that, Kevin Smith was involved in, or, you know, people associated with Kevin Smith. And to this day, he still does a bunch of Comic-Cons. So I actually met him at a Comic-Con in 2014. And so just, you know, got my Clerks X DVD signed, you know, and everything, just kind of a quick meet and greet. But I kind of kept running into him at other events. So the next time I really spent time with him was at a screening of Shooting Clerks, which is the Kevin Smith biopic, which is something you definitely want to check out. I don't think they've been trying to get it, I think, distributed for quite some time. I'm not sure what the latest is on that, but I saw it in the theater. They too smartly are just doing screenings. And I kind of got to know him a little bit more. I have a YouTube channel myself called Dork Daily. And so, you know, we were going to Comic-Cons and interviewing celebrities. And so Brian was kind of one of those folks that we would just kind of regularly kind of talk to. So we kind of got to know each other. And then when I was getting ready to do this film, I had a role in mind for him. It wasn't like a lead role, but just something we could get done, you know, in a couple days, you know, if we had to. Cause I know he has a very busy schedule. He travels all over the place, you know, for the cons. And, I sent him the script, you know, he was a fan of it, and, he just agreed to be on it. We had to just make sure we were SAG-AFTRA, we were union, because Brian is a member of the union, and we were going to do that anyway. That's a number of our cast members are union actors, and that was my first time working with SAG-AFTRA, you know, through the whole process. So yeah, I mean, I knew Brian.
You actually had to deal with paying like the I guess the SAG-AFTRA, you know, daily wage or whatever the wage requirements were. And okay, so this was a very, very large undertaking. Sounds like something, you know, you've never done before.
Yeah.
What was that like from an anxiety standpoint? You know, was this something that were there ever any times that you felt like, you know what, I'm just taking on too much here. This isn't going to happen, and I just need to wash my hands of it and move on?
Well, it's funny. Like I said, that was never an option for me to stop. Kind of a trick I've learned with kind of accomplishing big creative projects, which for some reason I'm drawn to, is just kind of say I'm going to do something, and then it's, you know, on social media, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because then I kind of have to. I kind of feel like I'm lying if I don't.
Yeah, you're being held accountable.
Kind of like a social pressure. But yeah, there was certainly, I mean, that was a whole level of complexity I'd never done before. I'd never worked with SAG-AFTRA. We had a lot of help on this. I had my crowdfunding manager, who I'll get into, I guess, when we get to kind of how the funds get raised. Leah Cevoli, who is also an Aston native. She went out to Hollywood to, you know, work on Robot Chicken and Deadwood. And she's my producer. So she's
those are some pretty big credits.
Yeah. So she came from the kind of the acting. She started in acting, but she got a lot of experience doing crowdfunding. I had met her on a project years prior. And when I was getting ready to do this, I reached out to her and I hired her on to help me crowdfund the project. And so this was like a 30-day of campaign using Seed and Spark. And Leah had a playbook, like, day one, we're going to do this. Day two, we're going to do that. By the time we were done, we had like double the amount we asked for.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's incredible. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what the movie's about, you know, just a brief synopsis. We don't want to give anything away. Basically, it's about a sheltered Delco individual who's, you know, raised by a pastor, correct? And he's homeschooled. And his senior year of high school, he's going to be allowed to venture into the Delco public school world and kind of live the traditional Delco lifestyle where all kind of chaos then ensues, right? What are some of the great Delco landmarks that you filmed at? One place I noticed obviously was Tom Jones. I mean, everybody knows what Tom Jones is. But I felt like, was there also a scene where you guys were in the CD, DVD store on Chester Pike in Norwood?
No. That location was actually Doghouse Gaming. That was one of the few places that wasn't actually filmed in Delco. We have a whole sequence kind of part of the plot where they go to a video game store, a retro video game store. The movie takes place in 2004, so it's kind of like I just put it back to what I knew, as a high schooler. And I wasn't able to get a game store in Delco to agree to let me film there. And then I had a connection to someone connecting me to Doghouse Gaming. The owner, the guy's name is Tweak. Awesome guy. He's also kind of has dabbled in film, and he said, yeah, you guys can do whatever you want. And so side note, that's actually going to be kind of the main location of our next film.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's awesome. So what are some of the other landmarks that were in it?
Big one was the Delco Shack. You guys know what the Delco Shack is?
No.
It's this kind of like for years and years and years outside of Springfield Mall, there was like this tiny little brick house. It looked like a piece of shit house that, everybody would drive. I know
exactly what you're talking about now.
So it's kind of been called the Delco Shack. And so there was a gentleman that actually bought that up and rents it out. And so we have a scene where our trio of characters, we have a son of a pastor. We have a kid that's even more sheltered than him. And then we have our female lead that's kind of the instigator of all the trouble. They go to the shack and vandalize it and everything. And what was great was that when we went and filmed that, we had the police called on us, apparently. It's not that we were vandalizing the shack. So it's, people were waving at us from, Route 1, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. Other places that we used a lot of local businesses, which were our sponsors, like Romadelli, was one of our best sponsors.
Okay.
And so we filmed some stuff in there. The whole opening sequence is actually, a bunch of different businesses, that got involved in the film. We wanted the opening sequence to just kind of like, just establish Delco. And so, we got Phil's and Jim's, we have, Let There Be Rock School, bunch of just kind of show the randomness of Delco.
That's great. I'm really happy that you did this. I think Delco has been put on the map in a lot of ways recently over the past couple years. Unfortunately, over the past couple months, a little negatively, we have had the Delco pooper. Hey, we're out there. I mean, we're known. Hopefully this will put us in a much more positive light. You just mentioned that a lot of the businesses that you filmed at were your sponsors, which I'm sure certainly helps. Now, when you say they sponsored you, besides letting them you film at that location, did they also help you finance the film?
They did, yeah. We had approximately 30 sponsors that signed on as associate producers. And so that was a certain amount of money that they put in. And we said, your business will definitely be in the movie, at some point. And so most are at the beginning, but like there's a whole sequence where, when they start causing trouble, they go to a bunch of different businesses and cause havoc. So I didn't, people ask like, well, how can you do that if, you already wrote the script? But I left it vague enough that with certain montage shots, it could be kind of anywhere. And it was kind of really fun to incorporate kind of each business into it, get like some of the business owners like doing some acting, which was really, really cool. Joe McGee over at Martin McGee's is one of our biggest sponsors, and we gave him a line, in the end scene. And so that's
yelling at the kids and stuff.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
Did you sit with this for 20 years, or were you constantly revising and iterating on the script throughout the last 2 decades before you actually began the crowdfunding?
It never really was, other than the original film I did where that was a script. But this version of it, I basically had an outline and a bunch of notes for about 20 years. That I save everything. I'm a digital hoarder. So like I have like emails from like 2006 where I wrote to myself, here's an idea that you could do here and there. And so I compiled everything and I picked what worked. So the idea was a long time coming, but it just was, at some point I had to pull the trigger. And it was kind of that looming, like, oh gosh, it's going to be 20 years. I was not feeling comfortable not having done it because I kept putting it off. Like, all right, well, I had to go to college. I got my first job. I went to grad school. I got married. Then COVID happened and everything. I'm like, it's now or never. Like, we just got to do this thing.
So you mentioned earlier that you're a teacher. So you obviously have a teaching degree. That's what you went to school for. So all of this started from being an amateur filmmaker, correct?
Teaching, kind of. I actually had a film teacher in high school that told me I should be a teacher. There was a unit. This was a class, like literature class, where like you wouldn't make films, but you would watch films and kind of discuss them and analyze them. We had a unit where we had to teach a film to the class like for a week, and so that I chose Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies of all time, right next to Clerks.
We just did a whole thing on YouTube about what's more iconic. Karate Kid versus Back to the Future.
That's a tough one. I mean, I would definitely say Back to the Future, but I imagine that would be tough for some folks. But my teacher, Mrs. Skybo, said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You should be a teacher." And I kind of struggled with that for a long time, where I felt like I could really only do one or the other. Like, I'm going to have to just teach or have to do film. And I really wanted to do both, but it just didn't seem realistic. And then thankfully, I got into a place where I was teaching film and broadcasting and journalism. And I had the flexibility of the summer to work on the projects I wanted to work on kind of once I got settled. So I kind of had the perfect situation there. And I had so many former students involved in the film, like either as cast or behind the scenes, which was really, really cool.
Were you a math teacher and teaching was just a way to put food on the table while your passion was building in the background? Or it sounds like you were teaching film and found a way to not only make money off of it, but have it be about your passion as well until this chance came about.
Yeah. So I'm horrible at math, but my degree actually in English. And so like when I was in high school, English was my favorite main subject. Like, I obviously loved film class the most, but English was my favorite main one. I've always been a storyteller. So I've just always been interested in that. And I knew that typically the film or video production teacher usually is the English teacher. And so I knew, like, if I wanted to do that, I was going to have to get my English certification. And so it really worked out well that Gotcha. I found a job that was only film and broadcasting and journalism. That was, it's a day job. I love it. It feels like that my two roles kind of intersect a lot. Like, I'm always looking for opportunities for my students, to kind of help them. And if something I'm working on can kind of help them, that's great. And I think it kind of adds a authenticity to my classes where it's like, hey, here's what I'm working on. I mean, I'm always learning new stuff all the time. Trends change, and it's a very cool kind of, and I have a lot of support from the students, and even my bosses have been very, very supportive of this. Cause you never know, there's some places, look anywhere on Reddit, there's so many teacher horror stories, but I always felt like I had a lot of support. So I'm very grateful for that.
Were your students in the film at all?
Yeah. One of the supporting actors was a student. I had him my first year of teaching. So this is years and years later. So yeah, quite a few students had, one-liners kind of thing. I didn't have anybody current on, but yeah, it was just, if it worked, it's kind of, I like putting people in that I know, whether that's, students or family or friends. And what was really cool though was we have a sequence where they're at Sun Valley. It's Sun Valley. I can't tell you where we actually filmed it, but it's supposed to be Sun Valley. And there's like a montage of like several of my former teachers that are retired to come back and basically play themselves, including Mrs. Skybo, my film teacher, who told me I should be a teacher. And so we, just a couple lines here and there. It was really, really a cool experience because when we were promoting it, it's not just me that knows these teachers or just, people that I graduated with, like, they taught for like 30 years. So there's people going back to the 70s and 80s, like, oh, I remember him. I remember her. And so that just, I've always loved movies like that where, you see people, or you see locations, it's a really cool feeling. And that was the intention, was to just make something that felt familiar.
That's awesome.
Now, we talked earlier about, you mentioned the police coming up to the Delco shack because they thought you were vandalizing the property. What other moments in the filmmaking process of making Delco the movie, what happened where you were just like, can you believe this just fucking happened? How many other moments were there during the making of this film?
I guess two. So one was before we started filming. We did the crowdfunding campaign in June and July of 2023. And so we were getting ready to film in August. It's the summertime. I have flexibility. And then like a month later, the strike happened. And so, on the surface seemed bad. But when we were like counting down, I was thinking like, I don't think we're prepared enough. Like, I think I need to do like another rewrite. Like my art department needed more time to make and find some of the props and everything. So we wound up kind of holding off until November. I did not want to film during the school year, but it just had to happen that way. And it ultimately was a better film. I think if we tried to rush it in August, it just wouldn't have been as good. I would not have been satisfied with it.
What about during filming? Was it one of these productions where, obviously it turned out to be a phenomenal film, but was there ever a time where you're like, you know what, anything and everything that's going to go wrong is going to go wrong?
Well, we had 11 filming days, which is very unusual for a feature-length film. I think my experience with doing a lot of short films and having to shoot kind of like, I've shot a lot of films like in one day that were like short films. So I know how to manage time pretty well, even though it doesn't always go according to plan. So I wouldn't say anything bad, but like, I think our most stressful night, there is a scene where a street sign is stolen and the police show up. So the police actually are in the scene. They weren't called on us. Like we worked with them. We got out. We started filming at like 8:00 at night, and we got done at 5 a.m.
Wow.
It was nuts. It was the summer when we filmed that. It was July. It was about a year ago, and sun doesn't set until like almost 9 o'clock. And so the scene takes place at night. And so we had to wait. It was just, I had actors like, we filmed in Brookhaven. So it's not like there was a whole lot going on. And my dad lives down the street. The town knew what we were doing, but I had actors asleep, like, on the sidewalk, everything's kind of waiting to get set up.
Now, did you have to pull a permit?
No, we worked with the police because we filmed in town. Like we didn't film anyone's house, but we just filmed at like an intersection. And then a later scene, we actually filmed at the police station. So we didn't need a permit. We just let them know what we were doing. So I think just kind of what was great is just everybody, all location owners were just really, really positive about like just being a part of a movie. I think there's a lot of goodwill towards us, which I really appreciated.
Well, the best part is it's a win-win for both parties, right? You get places to film, you have a great location, and I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when you get a distributor. Now their businesses go national. It's great for everybody in the community. Speaking on that, take us through some of the process of trying to secure a distributor.
Yeah, so we got, you get cold calls, so people kind of reach out, companies, and it's kind of tough to tell. You have to kind of do your homework with this because you have to see, is this a legit company? And even if it's a legit company, like, is it a good legit company? And so like kind of early on after the film had come out, we had somebody reach out to us and made us an offer it was weird. Like they kind of would control my work for like 10 years, which I'm like, no, like, if I ever wanted to do like a sequel or something. Like,
so the deal was not just for this film. They kind of wanted to basically take ownership of your production company for the next 10 years.
Yeah, so more or less. That was the proposal, And so what I did was I went to their website and I kind of looked over what other films have they released. And some of the movie posters had obvious typos in them. I'm like, oh, this is a red flag. And
how does that work, if you don't mind me asking, Chris? So, for example, you create the film, okay? Obviously, you're the one, or partners are the ones putting up the money. Producers, executive producers are the ones putting up the money to make the film, okay? Especially in the independent film world. Now, distributors start reaching out. You start meeting with distributors. Do they just buy the rights to your film and give you a flat fee, and then they're entitled to all the money from the distribution of the film? Or do you also work out something on the back end?
Every deal's different, but, it would be kind of a combination of that where we get something off the back deal and they initially get some money. It really depends on the company. And we've only really talked to 3 kind of right now. We have one that we feel pretty secure about that we're actually going to be talking to probably in about 2 weeks. And so hopefully we'll have kind of some more information there. But yeah, so the way I look at it is I don't really care about making money with this. I'm blessed to have a day job that I really enjoy. Like I'm not planning on leaving teaching anytime soon. Because that keeps me going. I really like working with the kids. I just want to make enough money to do another one. I mean, we had a really successful crowdfunding campaign, but it would be great to just get funds to the point that we don't have to crowdfund. That we're just
sure,
okay,
absolutely.
Here's going to be the next one. And actually, I just finished writing my next film.
What's that called?
Called Gamers, a Delco Movie.
Nice.
Gamers, a Delco Movie.
So,
go ahead, Mass.
I read this on the internet, so it must be true. But are you doing a Delco cinematic universe? Is that a legit thing you're trying for?
That is something I'm trying for. So
that's fantastic.
This next film, we're gonna have different leads, but we're gonna kind of see some of the same characters, some of the same locations. There's a Tom Jones scene, there's a Marty McGee scene, and so it's gonna be a very different film. I mean, I kind of lean more towards comedy and teen drama, that kind of stuff. In addition to Kevin Smith, I love John Hughes. Like that's someone else I grew up on. Breakfast Club, 3rd Day Off, big influence. So that's kind of where I live. I never thought growing up that anybody else would care about that, but I mean, clearly they do.
They do. It's funny. Massey and I just received, big week for us. We just received our very first IMDb credits. We have a friend of ours who's a short filmmaker who actually, is he in the Kevin Smith Film Festival this year, Mass? How does...
I don't know when. So his name is Chad Repko, and he has a bunch of short films, but he has a series of short films called Little Detectives. And the most recent one, he's trying to get into a bunch of film festivals. The Ocean City Film Festival is the biggest one that he's been a part of. But he said he was trying, and when we saw that you were entering into it, I let him know that I don't know when he's going to be able to release the film, if it's going to be this year or early next, but he's not confirmed yet, but he's trying to get into as many local film festivals as possible.
Now, I do have a movie question for you, because when we interviewed Chad, he's told us something that was very interesting about filmmaking. So in Delco the Movie, at the 20-minute mark, is that when the main character has his epiphany? Is that when everything starts to shift in the film? He has that's the first part of, I guess I would say, his arc, so to speak, in the film. Because Chad told us this, and we've gone and watched films, and it's amazing. Almost every film created within 19 and a half to 20 and a half minutes, the main conflict, the main issue, the murder, whatever, happens at that point in the film.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I mean, it's not an exact science. But me thinking back to, I don't remember exactly when certain scenes are. I know what sequence they're in, but I know that our main character, played by Steve Harding, it's about the 20-minute mark where he starts kind of questioning everything, and he's like, all right, well, you know what? I don't want to die in Delco. I just want to just have one crazy night. They're having this conversation at Tom Jones. So that's about
it's amazing.
20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, and what's amazing about it is, now that I understand from talking to Chad about, film writing, right? So a page is a minute of dialogue, correct? Yeah, roughly. So it's basically everything that's on the 20th page.
Yeah, and that can vary. That can vary, like if there's a lot of dialogue on the page versus if it's more stage directions. It's going to vary pretty wildly, but that's a good rule of thumb. Like, if I write a 90-page script, I know it's probably going to be about 90 minutes or so.
So besides Kevin Smith, besides, Clerks, Mallrats, Dogma, I mean, I could name them all. I love them all. Who else were your influences? What other directors, what other films would you say that you primarily like to watch?
Like in the early 2000s, a lot of the Judd Apatow films, like kind of just those buddy comedies, this is very much kind of influenced by that. I think maybe not so. Yeah. You guys ever see Fanboys? Yeah. Kind of influenced a little bit like that. I can't think of the director's name. But aside from that, like, I like kind of random films. I don't really I really like superhero films, but I don't ever see myself doing a superhero film. I don't feel a desire to do that. So there's plenty of films that I like, but I certainly have a wheelhouse I like to kind of stay in, when I can. Well, we'll see. Maybe that'll change.
I'm going to ask you to settle a debate for Massey and I, because you're bringing up a lot of topics, and these are all things that have already been covered on our YouTube channel, actually. Is Batman a superhero? I say no. I say he is the greatest vigilante of all time because what he can do with the proper training and with the money, any other man can do. He's not a superhero.
And my counter to that was there's a difference between superhero and superhuman. The bite is what made Peter Parker fulfill his desires, but the way that he was, the person that Superman became was always part of him. You know what I mean? So what is your take on that? Is Lex Luthor a supervillain? Is Batman a superhero without being able to fly or have special powers, right?
And real fast, because Iron Man is also not a superhero. He's a guy in a suit, even though he can fly.
Green Lantern without the ring. It goes on, right? So Bobby is basically saying that none of these men are superheroes because they don't have superpowers. So let's settle it for us.
That's a tough one. I have given this some thought. No, Batman is definitely a hero. Lex Luthor is definitely a villain. But I do think, I always felt like the word super implied superpowers, in some way. So I would say, I don't know, I wish there was another word for it. But, then Green Lantern, I mean, does that change his body at all? Or is that essentially just a suit when he puts the ring on?
I feel like he can fly with the ring on, right?
I don't know much about the Green Lantern. I don't remember him ever flying. Or am I thinking about the Green Hornet?
Yeah, Green Hornet and Kato, right? In the cartoon, he flew. I don't know if Ryan Reynolds flew in the movie. I'm not sure about that. So we didn't get a chance to thank you in the beginning, Chris, and very, very responsive, very accommodating, very flexible. As a small podcast just starting out, we appreciate that. So we want to say thank you. And, we started out at the beginning of the year. We knew we wanted to just have these conversations, but we were kind of all over the place. And recently we settled on the fact that we would transition into a movie and TV podcast exclusively. And that's the part that we're most passionate about and enjoy the most, right? So I think it starts there. And you were mentioning in the beginning that you were always a storyteller, but was it originally poetry and then it morphed into film? Or what? Take us back to that moment when you realized, no matter how I put food on the table, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think it started as early as when I was 3. I was drawing pictures.
Okay.
That was kind of my, I was drawing pictures of characters that I knew, but I'd always kind of put them in new situations, kind of like my own fan fiction, fan art, I guess. And so that kind of led to, well, maybe I like comics, maybe I want to be a comic book writer. I kind of do that. And then I wanted to kind of do more in-depth stuff. I wasn't really, a great sketch artist or anything. So I thought maybe I'll write novels. Maybe I'll do something like that. And so that's kind of where it was going. It was always narrative. I was never good at poetry, but I always loved narrative storytelling, especially anything that's an allegory and using things from my life, but changing it, in some way. I really like the mystery of if you watch Delco, there's a lot of stuff in there that's true. And there's a lot of stuff I made up, about my life. And it's kind of, I like kind of that being an enigma a little bit. And so it was seeing Clerks. I saw Clerks in 2003 for the first time on VHS. It's still in high school. And that's this is what I want to do it this way. Cause I really just love the idea of showing the audience kind of what's in my head.
That's awesome.
It's a great idea. So when you're going through your writing process, is that basically what happens? Do you figure out the ending first and work your way back, or do you write the story from front to back?
That's a good question. I think with any film that I've done, I feel like I have to start with, I need something to say. I need a point. What's the moral, maybe is the wrong word, because a
theme, so to speak?
A theme, if you will. But what kind of point? What's the takeaway I want the audience to get from this? And then, after that, it's all right, well, how do I use these characters to kind of do something with that? Or what kind of characters should I write to kind of express this the best way? What kind of events need to happen in the film? And a lot of times it starts with, on my iPhone, I have a notes app and I have it connected to my desktop and my laptop. So a lot of times I just will think of oh, that would be a really cool scene, or that would be a great line. And I'll just put it in my notes. And I have maybe 5 different movies that could be a movie, in my notes, different documents where I might be out somewhere and I think, oh, this would be really cool for a scene. And yeah, and it's, I think I kind of start with what do the big moments in the movie need to be? What's a must-have scene kind of in the movie? And then what's the stuff that has to go around it? And so then it starts kind of with a beat list, what's going to happen first and second, third, just a list of a summary, no dialogue, summary, what's going to happen. And then then I just kind of jump into the writing. With this script I just wrote, I did the same thing. I'm like, it worked once, so I'm going to try it again. And it worked. I wrote it. I spent all of July writing it, writing 5 pages and wrote to the end. And then I went back kind of in middle parts and I added about like 10 more pages where I felt there was stuff kind of lacking.
I was going to ask you, for you specifically, how different is the movie on day one versus the day it premieres? How does your script morph or change, or, day 8, you have an epiphany and something changes? What is that? How drastic of a difference would you say it is?
Oh, it's a big difference. Writing's really fun because like I don't have to rely on anything or anybody. I can just kind of do that wherever. Like it's very liberating. But the thing about filmmaking is it's the only art that you really need a lot of other people to do. So I wrote this, when I wrote Delco, I didn't know who was going to be in it. I didn't know who the actors were going to be that were in it. And so that after I met them, after I cast them, I started kind of changing things and kind of writing lines kind of more for them because I knew what their comedic styles were. And I'm like, oh, this would be really funny, if she says this or he says that. What kind of helped us, we were very sporadic in our filming. So we filmed for 6 days in November and December of 2023. And then we took off for a long time because I had to raise more money. Like we ran out of money and I had to go. That's when I started kind of talking to local businesses. We didn't film again until March. And so
that's when you knew it was a real film because that happens all the time.
Yeah. And we had to work, like I mentioned, Brian O'Halloran had, he has content. That's probably the toughest thing is scheduling. Scheduling is a bitch. Everybody, like trying to get everybody, especially scenes that like include the whole cast. That's really hard to do, but I've gotten better at it. So, we were off for like 3 months and we were going to film the church scene in March with Brian O'Halloran as the pastor. And then like a week before we filmed it or 2 weeks before we filmed it, I thought like, you know what, like this scene needs some punching up. Like I have Brian O'Halloran for a whole day. I have Brian Anthony Wilson for a whole day. They're interacting. We need some more jokes in here. And so that's where I wrote the, what exactly is wrong with Chester?
Yeah.
And a trailer, which actually my wife suggested I put at the end of the trailer. So she's a great sounding board. It was helpful kind of, if I had filmed it all like 11 days consecutively, I don't think I would have thought of new jokes. I don't think it was helpful kind of looking at what I had and then having some time to, okay, now that I know this person's style, I'm going to modify this a little bit. It's kind of when I'm done writing it, it's not only my film anymore. It's only solely my film when I'm writing it. And then after that, like, our team shares ownership in a sense with a creative ownership where they're bringing in things that I didn't think of. There's ad-libbing. My 3 leads are all theater actors. And that also made it very easy to film quickly because we didn't get, there wasn't a lot of kind of going back and, somebody flubbing their lines. And they just had an ability to play off each other. And sometimes I just let the camera roll and just see what we can get. And some of the stuff they came up with is some of the funniest stuff in the movie, stuff that I didn't think of. So it does change a lot. I think you have to be kind of open to, I always have been kind of open to change and collaboration. I mean, I think there's a fine line, but I tend to really kind of appreciate that kind of collaboration with this kind of stuff.
It's interesting. I've never heard anybody say, once I'm done writing and we start filming, it becomes everyone's film. In a sense, because I would imagine improv and different styles, and even like you wrote some of these characters before you even knew who you were going to cast, right? And then obviously it has to change after the fact. So I think that's a great way to approach it.
I agree. I want to say that because I know from just hearing horror stories from Hollywood, obviously the people here, there are some directors, writers in particular, who are very protective of their art, of their medium. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think usually the best art is produced when all the artists come together, like you're saying, on the set, and a director or a writer has the ability to say, you know what, I know I wrote this, but this works much, much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was I think the best thing I did for this film was that I found the right people to work on it. Because if you have the wrong person on your team, that can kind of poison everything. Somebody that's a control freak and just doesn't doesn't play well with others. And, there has to be somebody that has the final say, which is going to be me. I'm always going to have the final say, but you have to be open. I think you have to trust. Like, I trusted everybody kind of on that shoot. Kevin Hackenberg, my cinematographer, I've known him for a while, so that was helpful. But, sometimes we would disagree on kind of how we should do a scene. And sometimes if he really felt strongly about it, he would kind of fight for it. And then I would just trust him that, like, okay, you feel very strongly about this. Let's try it that way. And there was another time where I wanted to do something in kind of a very short period of time. And he's like, no, I don't think we need to. I'm like, no, we definitely need this. Like, I knew that was the time to put my foot down. And so it's a matter of trust. When you have a group of talented people and you can trust them, takes a lot of stress out of it.
Yeah, well, the best part about that is, too, in today's world, you're not shooting and cutting and editing 16 millimeter film, where if you do want to shoot it both ways, it's pretty convenient. Where being an independent filmmaker, if it was 25 years ago and now you are cutting and wasting film, it becomes a little expensive.
Yeah, no, I mean, digital is amazing that, anybody can make a film now. I would say the biggest, because sometimes, certain days, like we had O'Halloran for one day. And so if we have a limited amount of time during the day, sometimes as far as editing, sometimes I have things I have to cut out, like kind of small scenes or maybe some lines that I have to cut out that I'm like, we're not going to get that. So I have to prioritize, okay, what are things we have to get? Is this something I could get on a different day? Or is this something that, like, it's not the end of the world if I don't get it? And that's something I had to deal with every day.
I just thought about something really, really interesting. So the film is about what? What's the runtime? About 80, 90? Is that?
Well, about 90.
About 90. You sit down. You're about to enter the editing room with all of the raw footage. How many hours of filming did you edit?
God, I don't even know.
That's what I think. And the question I'm asking is, I'm curious, especially, this is a feature film, but it's an independent, feature film. I just think our listeners would love to hear how much work actually goes into, like, for that 90 minutes, it's actually about, 24 hours of footage that we have to go through.
Yeah. I mean, if you figure we shot, we had 11 days. Each day was about 12 hours, but the record button's not on for, 12 hours. So I don't even know. I mean, I'd say maybe 50 hours of footage, something like that.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. 50 hours of footage for 90 minutes.
50?
I had a script supervisor on set. And so that person would keep track of, have like a list of, okay, this take was a bad one. There was like, wind.
I'm big on this, by the way. I am huge on this. Massey knows The Blind Side. It drives me insane. Goodfellas, it drives me nuts. In the clown scene where all of a sudden he has a full wine glass, then it's empty, and then the plate's full, and then it's not. That drives me. I'm a big fan of the script supervisor on set. I think it's one of the most important jobs on a film set.
It really is. And now that you mention that, I was thinking of another really tough thing. When we shot the Tom Jones scene that you see in the trailer, I underestimated how much I'd have to plan that, because the waitress comes out and takes the order, and then she brings them the drinks, and then she brings them the food, and it's like, all right, well, how much of the food is going to be gone? Do we see the food in this shot? And it just was, I'm like, shit, I should have worked harder on figuring this out. And that was a point of frustration, but we did it. We got through
Somebody should have been in the background yelling, waffles!
The level of the liquid in the glasses and everything. You don't think about that. Yeah.
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't at all. We can't thank you enough for being on. Ladies and gentlemen, we again want to thank Chris Pierdomenico, director, writer, creator of Delco the Movie and many other films. We love that he came on and told us about the filmmaking experience, everything that he went through trying to get Delco out there on the map in a positive light.
Teacher, YouTuber, a new friend of the show. Yeah,
Chris
we appreciate you, Chris.
Well-respected
like we said
teacher.
earlier.
Of course, yeah. And I want to thank you guys for having me on. It was a true pleasure. And thanks for just promoting my work. And I love that you guys are doing this podcast. I think it's great that you guys got something regular going. And I'm looking forward to seeing many more episodes. So I wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right now, I really want to let Chris talk about his social media, when the next screenings are. Please, Chris, please plug the movie. We really want to hear all about it.
Yeah, so the best way to keep track of what's going on with the movie is to go to delcothemovie.com. We have a mailing list you can sign up for, and then just, when there's something going on, we'll let you know, such as an upcoming screening. Our next screening is actually going to be at Smod Castle Film Festival. It's going to be next Saturday,
Next Saturday would be the 9th.
Yeah, so Saturday night, we are playing Delco the Movie in Kevin Smith's movie theater, in his film festival, in his childhood movie theater that he bought to run as his own movie theater. We've met before. I mean, going back probably about 20 years. I met him probably shortly after I did the original Delco movie in high school. So we've met a few times, but I'd love to spend a lot of time with him and just kind of pick his brain, a little bit, because he's a very popular guy. He's doing a million things. I mean, he very, very much in demand. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so just find us on there, Delco the Movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, Chris, we want to thank you so much for coming on. I know I officially think you're a friend of the show. We're going to support your endeavors going forward. We'd love to have you on again down the road so you can tell us about Gamers, a Delco movie. We can't wait for that to come out. We know it's going to be great. And thanks again for everything, and we wish you nothing but the absolute best.
Enjoy the rest of your day, man. Thank you.
You too.